powers and abilities in anime are something that are so unique to each character and are what make them truly interesting. The concept of speculating what an individual's powers may be is one of the most exciting things to discuss, theorize about, and see how they'd match up against others. But what makes Yuta and Chrollo interesting is that they don't have their own specific power, at least not in the traditional sense. You see, the leader of the Phantom Troop and the Jujutsu Prodigy's abilities are to copy the techniques of others in their universe, with nearly limitless applications at their disposal. So in this video, I'll be pitting the two characters against one another to see who the supreme copycat truly is. I think the results may surprise you. So without rambling on, let's get into a Hunter x Hunter Jujutsu Kaisen versus battle, Chrollo Lucilfer versus Yuta Okkotsu. Who would come out on top and why? Starting off with Yuta and particularly talking about his physical stats, we know that he's not exceptionally strong and relies heavily on his massive reserves of cursed energy to overpower his opponents. When battling against Yuji after the Shibuya incident, he notes that he's not even close to being a power type combatant and is the polar opposite of somebody like him. But regardless, we've seen him be able to punch crater-sized holes in the ground, throw cars with ease, and destroy the ground from merely jumping on it. It's stated that he has so much cursed energy, in fact, that every single attack is decisive. And we can easily see this in action given how easily he could body the cursed spirits in the series. Although cursed spirits don't have much of a durability scaling individually, we know that according to Ichiji, grade 4 curses could be killed with a wooden bat, while special grades would basically need to be carpet bombed. We see in his fight against the special grade cursed spirit Kurorushi that Yuta's attacks are enough to harm it. On top of this, we see him knock out Choso in one single attack. And while technically not a cursed spirit, he's definitely a special grade combatant. And we also see in Choso's fight against Kenjaku that he took multiple hits from him and was still able to remain standing, scaling Yuta's raw cursed energy attacks above the evil sorcerer. Therefore, at a minimum, Yuta's physical attacks are the same level as multiple carpet bombs. In terms of his speed, we know that Yuta is pretty fast, being able to keep up with the post-Shibuya incident Yuji, someone who was able to literally dodge a piercing blood from Choso, an attack stated to break the sound barrier. Additionally, it's also important to state that Yuta was able to do all of this with his sword out, something that Yuji actively comments on and is amazed on how he can move so quickly. It's also worth mentioning that Yuta was most definitely holding back and didn't want to outright kill Yuji immediately. He wanted to create distance and let Choso and Naoya battle alone so he could complete his binding vow without anyone observing. And if you really want to highball Yuta's speed, you could argue that he is much faster than a Yuji who wasn't keeping up very well in the fight between Maki and Sukuna. This is the very same Maki that was able to dodge an attack against Cursed Spirit Naoya, who was stated to be moving as fast as Mach 3 or 2,301 miles per hour at his top speeds. Lastly, I think it's important to note that although Kenjaku was distracted by Takawa's curse technique, Yuta was able to dodge a point-blank anti-gravity curse technique and slice his head off without him really understanding what was happening. In terms of reaction time, Yuta is also pretty impressive as we see him react to a point-blank attack from Uro as well as dodge multiple energy blasts from Ryu. And even when hit from these said energy blasts, it's not a problem given Yuta's durability is insanely high. During his fight with Ryu, we see him get hit with a point-blank granite blast as well as deflect his energy beam attacks away with his bare hands. Keep in mind that this is a sorcerer with the highest recorded cursed energy output in history, making this attack alone potentially the most potent we've seen so far in the manga. Also, during his fight against Geto in JJK0, we see him get hit point blank and shrug it off like it's nothing. We know that special grade sorcerers are well above the level of special grade curses and therefore scale above the durability of someone like Hanami, who was taking multiple attacks from a playful cloud enhanced Toto. And given Yuta had been training since this point in time, we can scale his durability much higher than this. During his fight in the Sendai colony, Ryu compares punching Yuta to hitting a water tank. We also see him get hit point blank with Uro's thin icebreaker, an attack we've seen in the recent chapters to actually make the literal king of curses himself, Sukuna, bleed. I think all of these feats emphasize just how thick his cursed energy defenses truly are. Lastly, going into his attack potency, we know that at the bare minimum he could contend with the likes of Uro and Ryu, two special grade sorcerers and very solid combatants in their own right. Against Geto, Yuta unlocks Rika's true power and counteracts his maximum output Uzumaki, an attack stated to be the sum total of over 4,000 cursed spirits. And even with the weakened version of Rika that we see Yuta with with after JJK0, we see him contend with Ryu in a direct energy beam clash. And although losing, this puts him just below the strongest cursed energy output user in history. In short, I believe Yuta's scaling puts him definitely in the upper echelon of the verse, right behind the likes of the heavy hitters like Gojo and Sukuna. There's a reason that he was touted as the number 2 right behind Gojo, and all of these feats only serve to validate these claims. The only real weakness that I could think of for Yuta is his desire to become stronger and face the strongest opponents possible. It's been stated many times in Jujutsu Kaisen that selfishness, greed, and hunger for power are key for individual growth, but Yuta doesn't really play into this mindset. His individual goals are protecting others and doesn't really strive to be the strongest. He was simply just blessed with extraordinary talent and powers. Nonetheless, I think he poses an incredible challenge to the leader of the Phantom Troop, so let's see how the other side matches up. Now jumping over to Hunter x Hunter and talking about Chrollo Lucilfer. We don't really know much about his physical stats since they're barely used without reinforcement of Nen, but there are moments throughout the series that highlight what kind of physical monster Chrollo truly is. For one, when we see him escorting Neo Nostrad, he's able to incapacitate her with a chop to the neck that is so fast, it's barely perceived by security cameras. Additionally, he's able to pull an inner John Wick and kill a specific mafia member with a pen. Chrollo was able to easily hurl people at Hisoka from the stands of Heaven's Arena during their fight, low-key an insane feat. And this is all from someone who, in the hierarchy of the Phantom Troop, ranks 7th in pure strength, with the likes of Ugen, Finks, Hisoka, Franklin, Phaeton, and Maki all above him. But scaling above a Nobunaga who could manhandle Gon in an arm wrestling match until his aura started surging. Of course, this isn't indicative of overall power because Chrollo makes up for his natural strength with his insane amount of talent with Nen, his genius level planning and intellect, and absolutely busted Nen abilities. But at the very, very low end, Chrollo is someone who scales above a Gon who could push open the 4-ton gate at the Zoldix estate. With regards to speed, we know that Chrollo is insanely fast, being able to keep up with the likes of Zeno and Silva during his fight with them during the York New City arc. Now, it's hard to say if Silva got even faster throughout the events of the story, but for the sake of this argument, if he remained the same, this is a Silva that speed blitzed Cheetu and completely one-shot him. A character who was able to easily dodge bullets at point-blank range. Add on top of this that his father Zeno most likely scales to the same speed or higher. This places Chrollo as undoubtedly in the upper echelon of speed in the verse, apart from monsters like Netero and Meruem. And on top of this, we learn from Zeno after the fight that Chrollo wasn't taking him seriously, as he calls him out, saying that he would have been able to kill him if he was truly going all out. For his reaction speed, I think this goes highly in line with his speed feats, given he was able to react and dodge attacks from 2 highly trained Zoldyck assassins, who had every intent to kill him. I think that what also goes understated is that by his nature, Chrollo is a specialist, meaning that he doesn't have the natural physical attributes that an enhancer would possess, making this feat all the more impressive. In the durability department, the biggest feat that we see is Chrollo tanking a massive energy blast from Silva Zoldyck. Now, it's not explicitly stated how strong these blasts are, we can only speculate that they would be enough to harm Zeno since he told Silva to kill him once he pinned down Chrollo. And we see after the blast that he's completely unharmed, and he was actually more upset that he wasn't able to use Bandit's secret on them opposed to anything else. Therefore, it's easy to scale Chrollo's durability to the likes of Zeno, someone who's respected and is a close friend of the Hunter Association chairman himself, Isaac Netero, who we know respects strength above all else. Chrollo's attack potency is also very speculative since we don't see him using massive destructive forces to take down his opponents. On top of this, we really don't know the full extent of how his copied abilities could play off of one another except for the few fights that we see him take part in throughout the story and manga. The biggest AP feat that we see from Chrollo is that he was able to kill Hisoka using the explosive power of the Sun and Moon Nen abilities. And while we don't see many Hisoka durability feats throughout his fights because he rarely takes much damage, we know that at the bare minimum, he could easily shrug off a punch from a recently awakened Nengon with minimal, if any, damage. At the high end, Hisoka's durability scales directly or a little beneath Chrollo's since it's been implied that he's been an opponent Hisoka will get an ultimate thrill from, most likely meaning that he's stronger than him. We know that Hisoka's main goal in life is to seek out, foster, and fight stronger and stronger opponents, which would align directly with this fact. So with these physical scalings out of the way, let's discuss how the battle between these two powerhouses would play out. When stacking these two up against one another, I've come to the conclusion that they're not going to be that far apart from one another. I think that although Chrollo's speed scales slightly higher to Yuta's due to the nature of the verse, we've seen Yuta being able to easily tank attacks that Chrollo has been shown to output. Even more than this, if we're comparing Cursed Energy and Nen as energies of similar value, Yuta would have way more at his disposal than Chrollo to both defend and attack with, since the quantity of Chrollo's aura was never mentioned in a significant way. However, what I believe Chrollo makes up for his lack in physical output and explosiveness, he makes up for with his tactical mindset and overall hacked abilities. We see Chrollo can basically play 4D chess with his opponents and combine his different Nen abilities in unique and creative ways to adapt to his opponent and eventually determine a way to counter them. And during his fight against Hisoka, we see the clown constantly fixated on not getting hit with Black Voice, given it would have basically been a one-shot if it connected. And this caught me by surprise because their power outputs are drastically different, yet they have major advantages in areas where the other combatant doesn't. That's why this makes it very difficult to determine who would take the edge in a 1v1 scenario, but I think there are two possible outcomes. The first is that Yuta and Chrollo simply meet each other without any idea of who the other was and began fighting. In this scenario, I would give the slight edge to Yuta given he would overpower Chrollo over time and manage to tank or power through any combination of copied abilities that Chrollo uses. The second scenario is that the two are familiar with one another and have a set time to battle. In this case, I would lean towards Chrollo taking this one. We've seen that he's most in his element when he has time to prepare, gather the correct Nen abilities for a specific application, and execute on a plan. If given enough time, I could see Chrollo devising a plan and taking down Yuta rather easily. We know that he's a master of using his environment and surroundings to his advantage and would consider all different possible scenarios if given time to execute. But I would love to hear all your thoughts in the comments below. This is my first versus battle video, so apologies if I missed some details here or there. If you haven't, be sure to check out my video on Hajime Kashimo and why I think he's misunderstood by the fan base. Thank you so much to the members of my channel, your support is really appreciated. Have a great day and I'll see you all in the next one. Stay curious, anime fam. Peace.